There is nothing worse than being halfway through a home theater install and then realizing you still need something and now you have to wait for it to ship. But my friends, not to worry, because you're not gonna make that mistake after watching this video where we're going to go through all the random odds and ends that you're going to need for a home theater. Really quick, I do wanna say thank you to the sponsor for this project, Crutchfield. Crutchfield has advisors on staff ready to take your call and answer all the questions that you have for picking out all of the gear for your home theater. Not only will they help you pick out the main gear and stay within your budget and meet your goals, they'll also help you pick out all the odds and ends, some of the things that we're going to be talking about in this video. When you're planning a home theater, definitely check them out. You can also take advantage of a special offer for CarAudioFabrication fans at the link down in the video description. The Crutchfield advisor that I worked with, his name is Paul, and he helped me pick out all of this different gear, so let's go through everything here. First off, Ethernet cable. Obviously, we're going to need speaker wire and signal wires throughout our home theater build, but we also need a way to get the data signal from our main hub in our house, in other words, our router, to wherever we're going to have all of our home theater gear. You might be wondering, why not just use Wi-Fi? Well, a lot of times, especially when we want to watch 4K content, if we're streaming that, we want to make sure that we have the best connection possible, so it's a good idea to wire in directly. Next up are different types of audio signal cable. You guys are probably familiar with this. This is an RCA signal interconnect that will allow us to connect between different devices to send the audio signal. In my case, I'll be using these to send signal from the receiver to the external amplifiers. These obviously come in different lengths, but the other thing to account for is how many channels. So in this case, this is a stereo channel of left and right. For your subwoofer, you're going to just use a mono channel RCA. Something to remember here is how many of these cables to get. As an example, I'm running 2 subwoofers in my system. So you would think, okay, he only needs 2 of these cables. But the thing is, if we have all of our AV equipment in a room that is separate from where our subwoofers are going to be, we have to remember we might need more cables. And that's because in my case, I'm going to be using 2 of these wires to send the signal for each subwoofer from the receiver to the wall plate. Once in the wall plate, I'll be using this RG6 cable. We'll talk about that more in a second. And then once we get to where our subwoofer is located, again, we're going to go through a wall plate, and that's why I need these other 2 cables to plug into the wall plate and then plug into the sub. The subwoofer in this case having an amplifier built into the sub, that's why we have to send the signal. The reason for the RG6 cable is we can get really long lengths of it like this, and this is a coaxial cable that we're going to use a special crimping tool in order to apply the end connectors that give us that RCA connection. By being long and being on a spool like this, it's easy to set this in one room and then have it uncoil off of the spool as we run it up into the ceiling or through walls as need be. So like I mentioned, don't forget that if you are using that RG6 cable, that you're going to need a crimping tool and also the compatible connectors. Let's talk more about the wall plates and those different connectors. If you do have a separate rack or all of your equipment in another room, you definitely want to get some wall plates like this that will allow you to make all the connections out of the rack into the wall so everything is nice and clean. This wall plate here in particular is pretty unique. You can see it's for a 7.2 system, so it gives us 7 channels for speakers, so you obviously have a positive and negative on each of those channels, and then it also gives us 2 different RCA connections, which in this case I'll be using for the subs. But you might have even more than 7 speakers. There are other options of this available, or in my case, since I'm using different zones with more speakers, I got these speaker connectors here, which gives me plenty of flexibility and upgradability for in the future. Now, what about on the other end of the wire that is close to your speaker? Wouldn't it be nice if, just like an outlet, you had basically an outlet that you could plug in the speaker connections for your speaker? In that case, we definitely want to get some of these wall-style plates that have these Keystone connectors. So Keystone is basically this white type of connector here, and there's different types of Keystone connectors based on what you're trying to do. Right here, this is obviously a positive and negative for speaker wires. But you could also get this type here. This allows for a coaxial style connection on the back and gives you an RCA output. The Keystone wall plates also have different configurations, so you could get one like this that only has the 2 connections. That could be for a single speaker, positive and negative. You could get one like this that would allow for 2 speakers, or you could get one that has 3 holes. That way it's 1 speaker pair, positive and negative, plus the RCA connection. Lots of different options. And don't forget, if you're using those Keystone connections for the RCAs, since they have the coaxial threading on the one end, this will allow me to adapt that RG6 cable to the coaxial side. Now, how are you going to connect all of those speaker wires to those wall plates? Definitely check out using banana plugs. These simply attach to each individual speaker wire, so we have a positive and negative version, and this allows us to easily plug in and unplug as need be. You could obviously use these connections as more of a push to connect style, but that hole on top, that's made for these banana plugs. And what's nice about using the banana plugs is if you do want to service the system, if you need to move a speaker quickly or anything like that, very easy to just unplug those plugs. These things here are super cool. I didn't even think about this. Wait until we talk about that later. The final wall plate style to consider is this one, which isn't really a style at all. It's just a pass-through hole. These work really nice for running HDMI wires through, or even your power cable for a projector, or you'll just find that these are really handy to have. There's many different uses for these. Now, what about speaker wire and HDMI cable? I probably don't have to tell you guys that. You guys know that you need that. Obviously, speaker wire for sending the signal to the speakers, HDMI for sending your video signal. What I do want to stress here is, one, on the speaker wire, it's a really good idea to get it on a large roll like this. Odds are you're going to find out that you need a lot of speaker wire, so it's a good idea to buy more than you think you need. And the nice thing about it being on a spool is, again, we can have it just sitting in one room, and as we pull the wire, it's just going to easily come off the spool on its own. This makes running long runs of this a lot easier. This is in-wall rated, and I definitely recommend on the speaker wire, you want to get OFC wire. OFC stands for oxygen-free copper, and you have to be really careful because some of the cheaper wire out there, it's usually CCA, which is copper-clad aluminum. It doesn't have as good of conductivity as this wire does, and this lasts a lot longer and provides a much better signal. As far as HDMI cables go, definitely make sure that you plan out your route because you may need a very long cable. If you're installing a projector, definitely don't forget to get a projector mount. This is just part of mine here. The other part is currently attached to the projector, but I did want to show this. There are cool kinds out there that allow for quick disconnect. That way, if you do need to service the projector or take it down to get it out of the way. On this one here, there's a lever that we can move, and you'll notice right here that it opens up that hole. That way you can slide the whole projector off the mount. So I thought that was kind of a cool technology to check out. Definitely worth making a good investment in your projector mount because the better ones are going to have a lot more adjustability so that you can really line up the projector perfect with your screen. We're going to talk about my favorite things you definitely don't want to forget in a second here, but what about these? These are going to be our 12-volt trigger wires. The receiver for our home theater system has what's called a 12-volt trigger, and what that is by plugging this into the 12-volt trigger and then plugging the other into an amplifier or to a Blu-ray player or any other device that allows it to be triggered, what this will do is when the receiver turns on, all the other gear in our system is going to automatically turn on. This is nice, especially when all of your gear is in a separate room because you don't have to go into that room and then power up each thing individually. As soon as the receiver is turned on, everything turns on. Now, speaking of being in a different room, this is my favorite device right here. You definitely want one of these if all your gear is in another room or in a closet. This is the infrared remote control extender. So this brain box works with one of these, and what this will do is we can put this in our rack and we run the wire from our rack to wherever we're going to have an IR sensor. And the IR sensors can be located in our room, and we can use multiple, as you can see. What this does is now we can have our remote controls in our room wherever we're sitting with the screen, and we can just aim the remote control at this IR sensor, and it's going to repeat that information back to the main hub here, and then this sends out a signal that we can use with the IR emitter. You can see the IR emitter here. So we will just mount this on the inside of our AV rack pointing at the equipment. And by having that there, this essentially becomes somebody standing there with a remote control doing your bidding as you press each button. The way my room is laid out, I have to have all the gear in a separate room. Definitely excited about this. Now let's help each other out here. Is there anything that I forgot in this video that should be added to this list? Let each other know down below. If you can't tell by the missing ceiling tiles and the wires hanging from the ceiling, I'm currently working on installing a home theater here on the channel. Along with this video, I have a video detailing installing a projector screen. I'm gonna have a video about how to install in-ceiling speakers, wiring tips, a bunch of stuff here on the channel. So if you're new here, I'd love to have you as a subscriber and you can check out those other videos. Next time you need help picking out exactly what you need for your home theater project, definitely check out video sponsor Crutchfield. You can learn more and take advantage of a special offer for CarAudioFabrication fans at the link down in the video description. More home theater and car audio videos coming soon. Thank you guys for watching.